All right, another week of personal finance. First off, on the homework, I saw an email somebody asking about where the assignment for the banking problem is. I've tried to make that pretty clear both in the syllabus and on the recording that that is not in the book. You just analyze the different banking options you have, both physical and online, and you look at the attributes as discussed in the assignment, and it doesn't have to be a huge project, a page or two, just outlining why you made the choices in terms of whether it's convenience or the financial aspects of it for the fees and stuff. So uh, anyway, you'll work on that. The other thing was we talked been a big week last week. That whole thing with the game stocks or the meme stocks as they're called. Yeah, that whole thing went completely sideways, and I kind of right after the lecture, um, the next day, it was clear that it was not a normal market. That the a thumb was being put on the scale, and it wasn't going to work out for the little guy, for the small investor. And I was aligned with those folks, so I sold my stuff and got out of there. Actually, I think it ended up about $20 a head, so good enough. The other thing was that was just a sad episode because it what I did with that money though, since it was already kind of speculative money, was I transferred it over to cryptocurrency stuff, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, stuff like that, and that's actually doing pretty well because people, especially in the Wall Street bet sector or the younger sector, are just becoming disillusioned that the way Wall Street handled that was not good. Obviously GameStop and AMC, they were kind of failing companies. They're probably going to go under eventually, but the biggest loser was Robinhood, the trading platform itself. They were planning on doing an initial public offering, and they withdrew that, and they just came up with flimsy excuses, and they just proved themselves really not worthy of your business. It's like anything else. If you think you're getting something for free, where you're getting, you as the customer are paying nothing for it, look again. You're not the customer in that case. You're the product. They're selling your information. They're pre-running your trades. They're just doing a lot of things that didn't happen in other brokerages. Even TD Ameritrade, which is not a bad brokerage, I thought, but they've been bought out by Schwab. So again, just like banks and stuff, just because you're aligned with one place, if they change hands, maybe they lose a little something. But anyway, Fidelity was just fine. Bought and sold all the shares I needed to, got in and out of the trades, and moved on. But that was kind of a sad, segment of whatever they work so hard to try and make investing for the average person, and then they just burned them. The hedge funds, put their thumb on the scale. They wouldn't allow any any more buys and only allow sales, which obviously, supply and demand is going to put negative pressure on the price. Those folks were able to close out all their positions. The other thing about that too is when you're investing in the stock market, and don't be disillusioned with investing in the stock market in general, because everybody can win when companies are growing. The stock price appreciates, and you don't have to have winners and losers. But in a short sale type situation, you have a contract, whether it be an options contract or a futures contract, and there's different people on either side of the bet. And if you're trying to buy an options or a futures contract, you're buying it from a professional, somebody who does this stuff full time, and they, for whatever reason, think that they're going to win and you're going to lose. So I don't necessarily like that situation. I'd rather be in a situation where you're betting on the stock price to go up, and you don't have somebody who stands to profit if you lose. Anyway, so credit. We're going to be talking about credit. Again, credit is kind of an ambiguous term because some people have a very pejorative sense of it. They think, oh, you don't want any debt, you don't want any bills, you need to do everything in cash, and that's just not the way things work. If you do strictly cash, for the reasons I mentioned before, in real estate, for example, you're just probably never going to be able to get in the market, and if you do, you're going to be so hindered because you could have gone in so much earlier and had money working for you. You're essentially renting money. And if you're renting money and it's costing you a huge amount of money, then no, that's not a good deal. But if you can rent money for, like right now down on the mortgages, I mean, we're talking 2-3%. That's exceedingly cheap. Your investments are going to go up more than that. So again, it does involve some risk, but you're better off um, almost maximizing the amount you borrow because it's so cheap. Now with credit cards, it's the exact opposite. There's no way your investments on a recurring basis are going to be yielding, rates approaching 20% or whatever the credit cards are charging you. So that's horrible interest. That's not a financial plan. It's not tax deductible. But again, mortgage interest is tax deductible and it's quite low. So anyway, so that has to do with credit, basically renting money from somebody else. They break it down into installment credit, non-installment credit. So we may not use these terms, but we're kind of used to that. If you're buying a car, for example, you're generally using installment credit. Your car payment doesn't vary by the month. You can't pay, a smaller amount one month and a larger amount the next month. There's a, fixed amount that's due, and it's usually tied to a specific purchase. Now, non-installment credit, so I'm kind of working backwards here. Non-installment credit is, maybe a credit card or something like that, where it's got some flexibility, or perhaps a line of credit with a bank where it's not a fixed amount, where you can take advantage of more credit and pay off once, or pay a minimum payment one month and pay off the balance the next month. So that doesn't have a fixed payment schedule. And then revolving open-end credit, which kind of gets back to what I would consider the first type of credit, the non-installment credit. Not a whole lot of differences between those. So again, we're not going to have a test on that specifically, but just keep in mind a home mortgage, for example, is an installment purchase. Now you can pay it off earlier. Say I always take, and most people, 90 some percent of all the mortgages taken are 30-year mortgages. And I would always kind of opt for the 30-year mortgage. And I know some people are saying, oh, I'd rather pay it off in 15. Well, then pay it off in 15. Get the 30-year mortgage and double up your payments. And it won't even take doubling up because the term's going to be shorter. But anyway, I would rather have the flexibility of having 30 years because that's kind of the bread and butter of the industry. That's where the rates are typically quoted for. That's just the sort of the standard. When I was in Spain, they were doing 60-year mortgages, that's just obscene because you're not even going to pay it off in your lifetime. You should have your children's or somebody else's blessing before that. In reality, they'll just sell it out of your estate. But anyway, it's longer than most people are going to live when they're taking that. Advantages using credit, building a credit score. Take it for what it's worth. A good credit score is valuable because it will get you the lowest rate, but don't obsess about it. Like I say, when you need money, they generally don't want to give it to you, and when you have all the money you need, that's when they're bombarding you with loans. So and there is no checks. They will get you in over your head if you let them. Eliminates the need for carrying cash and writing checks. Sure, we've talked about writing checks before. That's probably going to phase out in your lifetime, except for limited things. And the carrying cash, there's disadvantages and advantages to that, but especially with COVID now, there's a big push to make it cashless, and it is so much easier. But there's certainly advantages for the government and other things to kind of keep track of what you're doing and control your behavior. But anyway, I'm not going to get conspiratorial. Credit funds provided by a creditor that will be repaid. Okay, so we're working the wrong direction. Why the heck is it rolling backwards? I'm sorry. Okay, disadvantages, excessive spending. So I kind of made the example as having some sales and the ability to take credit cards. It's quite easy to see people just you don't have to push them. They'll overspend. They'll say, oh no, I can't spend any more than $2,500 on this. And then all of a sudden you say, well, I'll take a credit card, and next thing you know, they're spending 3,500 like it's the money comes from somewhere. Anyway, you know the dangers of credit cards. Large accumulation of debt, and it does get away from you. And especially if you're only making a minimum payment. So all those things we talked about with compound interest, they work exactly the same, but exactly the opposite. So that whole ballooning effect that will happen to you, and credit cards are happy to put you in that position and just have you there's two types of people who pay interest and people who earn interest. And the people who are making money, again, gets back to our kind of a hedge fund example. They're more than happy to have you, basically pay for their lifestyle. More and more you're seeing the society. It's not so much a left versus right. It's a elite versus working class, and right now there's a whole lot of folks paying a whole lot of interest that's making a whole lot of other people quite wealthy. There's always been reforms, and there's been more reforms even since 2010. But they come through, but they're always kind of behind the power curve, or somebody will make some sort of change their policy just slightly. And anyway, it's again, you have to use your own common sense, because the scammers, it's like computer viruses or anything else. They're working harder than the other folks, because there's so much money to be made. So a lot of this fine print, it just ends up being page upon page of stuff that you may or may not read. One interesting thing on that, though, and this relates back to the Robinhood brokerage. You keep hearing people talking about, oh, it's going to be a class action lawsuit against these folks. Well, it may or it may not be, because just like cell phone contracts and a lot of other things, when you sign all that paperwork and that terms and conditions or end user license agreement, a lot of times you sign away your right to have a class action lawsuit, which means a class action lawsuits, you get a whole bunch of folks, and you get some lawyer, and he determines these people are all in the same class, and the lawsuit goes forward as a group. And it's a way where you don't individually have to hire a lawyer and go to court. You'll get a letter saying, do you want to be in the class or opt out of the class? If you opt into the class, then you forego your right to sue individually. If you opt into the class, then you let this lawyer, this mega lawyer, represent you and the other folks. But anyway, what usually happens in that is, you get a check for 50 cents or something, and the lawyers, they get millions. And so it's very rarely do class action lawsuits really deliver for the customer. But what's funny about this case is those also end up being very expensive for the person that's being sued, the entity, the corporation. So they'll opt for arbitration. And the problem with arbitration, well, what you sign up for is to avoid legal costs. The companies will often have you, make it a requirement you sign up to agree to arbitration, which means that you can't take them to court. You agree that the matter will be handled through arbitration. And arbitration is kind of like court, It's usually a retired judge or somebody like that and some lawyers involved, but it's not as formal and it's not as expensive. And it can produce a fair outcome. But the problem with this with Robinhood is they had that stipulation that no class action lawsuits and it had to be solved through arbitration. But if these people gang up and rise up again and individually each Robinhood member who got kind of screwed in this deal um, demands arbitration, that could bankrupt Robinhood itself because although arbitration is generally cheaper, if you got a million customers all demanding arbitration, even if it costs, a few $100 per client, that is a lot of money. So anyway, it's not. There's no scenario where Robinhood comes out on this in a positive position. And anyway, for most people like me, we just kind of moved on. Some people are going to hold on to the very end, but they've got a lot of time and money invested, and good luck to them. Anyway, so background on credit. So yeah, if you've got a bunch of credit card debt, um, you're not going to be able to save. So go figure. Anyway, but again, they're just saying credit, and that just kind of bothers me because it's there's different credit. Some is very bad, some is helpful. Credit history, so utility bills, cell phone bills. Most of you would, well, you might in an apartment obviously have utility bills, but one of the first things people normally start with is a cell phone bill. Pay things on time. Credit insurance. This is kind of funny where they'll come to you and they'll say, hey, we're going to offer you this free life insurance in case you die, your credit card bill will be paid off, and sign up for it. And fair enough. I mean, especially if they're paying for it, but it's not because they're magnanimous and want to help you out. It's because they don't want to be fighting over a grieving widow or somebody in their estate when the bill is due. They'd rather have a small insurance policy, a life insurance policy on everybody who has a credit card with them. Now, if it covers like out of work situations or COVID, yeah, that might have been pretty valuable. But you can imagine that from now on, that's not going to happen. This COVID thing's going to change a lot of things. Credit bureaus, three main ones: TransUnion, Experian, and what's the third? Anyway, there's three of them. They're almost like Equifax. Sorry, they're almost identical. But they all have their own little formula, which they won't reveal. They consider that proprietary information, but that's what they use to determine your credit score. So you can get a free credit report annually, but don't be conned. This is not these people who like online say, "Oh, get your free credit report," and it's some commercial advertisement. The actual free credit reports that you're entitled to are not advertised because they're not really a good deal for the credit card, or not the credit, but the credit bureau people. It's a mandate that they have to provide them. So they're going to do that grudgingly. What they will like you to do, though, is they'll say, hey, you should have your credit score. Because if you're getting the free one, it'll have all your info, but it won't actually have the credit score because they don't have to provide that for free. But anyway, what you need are literally the free ones. And um, the problem with the other ones that call themselves free, a lot of times it involves a subscription service where they'll give you the first month free, and then they'll make you give them a credit card or something like that, and go figure. Next thing you know, you're on a subscription because you failed to cancel. It was 2 months free, and it was like a trial offer. But anyway, don't. Anytime they're asking for your credit card, they probably do not have your best interest at heart. The other thing about this is since they're available annually and there's three of them, you can apply to each one individually. So you can get one of these, 3 times a year if you want. Or if you apply for credit and they say, yeah, no, you're not worthy, then you can demand a credit report right then. And again, they have to give you that for free. So especially if your credit is, what you think reasonable, and you get denied, it definitely you want to look at that to make sure that they even have the right info. Um, Credit card reports, credit bureau. So part of the problem with these things, it depends how confusing your background is. But with me, I mean, I was married just once, been divorced 10 years, but every time they ask me all these questions, it's all this stuff from my ex-wives, and they're asking me, have you ever lived at this address? And the answer would be no, but they don't give me no, none of these addresses. These people, they don't always have the best info. I mean, obviously you have your social right, but the address, the phone numbers, the friends, they tend to get things kind of messed up. Um, and a lack of information. Um, yeah, when they say negative information, it may actually say bankruptcy, or it may not have information on there, which means that's weird. This person's 40 years old and it shows they have no credit cards. No, it's obviously somebody had a bankruptcy because all that data has been wiped. So these guys have done this before. If you actually get to the point where you turn over a collection agency, yeah, you're not a not a good person, or well, not a good person in the eyes of the credit card people. What happens is, let's say you owe Visa, $5,000, and you just don't pay, and they send you a number of letters, and then after a couple months, um, they may hound you a little bit more, but then they're going to send it off to a collection agency, and so they'll sell that $5,000 bill, which basically the right to collect $5,000 out of you. They may sell that for, I don't know, $500, $50, something like that, knowing that good luck trying to get money from this person. But anyway, that dog the bounty hunter kind of person who buys that credit, um, they have the full entitlement to collect that entire amount. So they may be a little bit more aggressive because they stand to profit quite a bit, and they paid pennies on the dollar for the ability to collect your debt, and now they're going to do that. Open and closed accounts, yep, everything's on there, all kinds of stuff. So especially like if you get a store credit card, Gap or Kohl's like that, something like that, it generally will not actually show that company. And what you'll find out is that, you know, Gap, for example, might do business with Citibank or somebody like that who actually runs their credit card operation. And so it may take a bit of deciphering on your part to figure out what's what. List of companies that have requested your credit report. So you can kind of correlate to this junk mail. If you're getting a ton of junk mail from, let's say, Discover Card or American Express or somebody like that, they've probably asked for your credit. And if you've, taken credit, gone to get a credit card from Lowe's or Cabela's or something, there'll probably be some sort of inquiry on there. Now, if you're, as I mentioned before, if you are trying to initiate a bunch of loans and you're shopping around and, shopping for a car, maybe and you let them run your credit, yeah, you can expect your credit score to go down because the credit companies don't like that because they see that and they think, oh, this person's trying to amass a bunch of credit. Got a buddy who did this. He was getting, he was leaving the Navy and, he knew he wasn't going to be working the next year. And I think he actually put the money in the stock market. He was crazy. But anyway, he took out about 4 or 5 credit cards, maxed every one of them out on cash, and dumped it in the market. And anyway, yeah, his credit score went way down, but he wasn't trying to borrow money. He didn't care. And he made some money in the market. I mean, once in a while you can, but make sure you're you know good. So the information that's going to be on there. There is I would ask now, do not turn this in as an assignment. I do not want to see your credit report, but it behooves you to go and look up your credit report and just see what they kind of have on you and what looks reasonable. And so this is just kind of academic. This is just a sample. You can actually see your own by going to one of those companies, and I'll show you how to do it. So it'll show banks, and just be negative information. But in reality, I mean, the thing ends up being about 16 pages long. And, no news is good news. It'll just say paid as agreed or, paid in full or just, you can be late a couple times and it doesn't matter. It doesn't generally make it on a credit report until you start defaulting on things. So that credit score. But the important thing is it can affect the interest rate and it can affect your ability to get the credit card. Pardon me. So you can't get the card until you have the credit score. These are just guesses on the part of the authors, payment history, because they all have these proprietary formulas that they come up with. But that new credit, 10% of the score, that's what I'm talking about. Where, if you've got whatever score up in the 800s, you'll see it drop down in the 700s just based upon, shopping a couple loans throughout the day. Don't always have the same info. That's correct. So you don't, I mean, they don't really do much for you if you've got, say, an 800. I mean, it's nice to have, but what you really need is something better than the 600. If you find a mistake in there, yep, you can also put a personal statement in there, whether anybody reads it. But anyway, if there are errors, they have to fix it. Yep. And again, if you think you're in trouble, do not try to hide from these people because they'll just assume the worst. If you, especially now, with COVID and places being shut down, they're probably a little bit more flexible. Or perhaps if you've got a credit card that is just killing you, they may do some sort of debt consolidation loan where they shut down your credit card perhaps or reduce your credit card and they get the money you owe and perhaps convert it to a longer term installment loan and at a lower interest rate. So anyway, they're you're kind of all on the same team here. They want to see that you pay it off and that you don't go bankrupt and they get nothing. So they have their own service. Now again, if it's some .com thing who's for a fee is going to help you with your credit, it's probably not what you want to do. That's probably just going to be another bill that you owe. And oh, by the way, they're going to make sure they get paid before they help you all at all. So they do have a credit counseling service within the credit cards that actually can assist you and works as paid by the credit card association or whatever directly and not on you. So at least twice a year. So again, you could do it 3 times a year if you wanted to. Make sure it's accurate. Yep. So FICO scores, if you're in this lower part, so it's not that hard, I guess. If they're saying percentage wise, well, I guess we've got 800s up here, but you can pretty easily get up here 750 plus, and that's where you're going to get the best interest rates. If you're 800, 850, you probably don't need the credit. You're probably not taking those kind of loans. Or you're probably smart enough to find other loans. I mean, I can get loans for equipment and things, but um, again, I generally borrow against my other investments or find some other means because the banks, when they're loaning money, it's still going to be 7-8% unless it's on a mortgage, and that's kind of high comparatively. So this FTC.gov, let's see if it'll go right there. Credit Karma, not bad, but again, if you're getting it for free, that's because you're the product. So on the FTC, this is a .gov site, so no spoofing or anything there. You went straight to it. Get your free credit report. Now it's going to warn you. It's going to give you a few things here. and then it's going to direct you to the other sites. It's going to tell you about these imposter sites where they tell you it's free. So rather than take them down or whatever, they just put a warning up there. Um, anyway, a little bit more information for you. But if you just want to get to the credit sites, it's at this point going to take you off of the other sites because these three companies, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and it says, yep, you're about to leave the government site, but you were directed. And then request your free credit reports, and then have fun. Request your credit report, and bada bing, you'll get a printout of it, pending, or depending on whether you can answer all their questions. And I'm telling you, sometimes, I have no success because they're asking me information that literally I do not know. Um, so Credit Karma, mixed bag. There's Mint, there's Credit Karma, there's other people out there, and just make sure that you're getting some value from the system because again, and it may be something as innocuous as them just sending you a bunch of junk mail for credit cards and getting your name on a mailing list that they're going to use. But at some point anyway, they're selling your data to that's their business model. Identity theft. So you all are, the opportunities for identity theft are much more because it used to be you had dumpster divers and people actually having to find paper. That's just not done anymore. They generally will work on um, either swiping your credit card information, taking it electronically, but very rarely is it going to be physical type things. Um, but anyway, tax 50 million a year. It can be kind of silly. I've had this happen numerous times. About every 6 months or so, my credit card I'll get either a note or I'll see some bogus charges. In Europe, it was much worse. In fact, there's a video I'll show you about that, about some of the skimmers and some of the different things they use with automatic teller machines over there. But it's quite prevalent, and it comes over here as well, especially when you're using things like Venmo and Cash App and stuff like that, where essentially they've got your password and all that on their database. It can be fairly dangerous. So the only real solution, because the tactics are going to change all the time, is to look at your accounts fairly often to make sure there's no unusual charges. Yeah, I don't lose money doing this. I mean, if you catch it. So again, getting back to some of those regulations, some of these credit card acts and consumer protection things. If you catch the fraud quickly, not only are the people very pleasant to deal with at the credit card companies, but you'll get your money back because they won't have paid it to the person trying to perpetrate the fraud. Now, if you let it go like 3 to 5 days, now the credit card has to try to recover that money from whoever they paid it to. So they're going to be a little less cooperative. And if you let it go over 30 days, yeah, now you may be just out of luck. So timeliness is the issue. But I've done this before, where you got to go down to the police department and you got to get a police report, and they absolutely don't care. I mean, it's like the Big Lebowski. They're not going to put the whatever the crime lab on your missing money. You're gonna pay them 10, $15. They're gonna give you a police report. You're gonna fax that off to whoever it is just to verify that you know makes you basically just sign off that there was some sort of crime, and they may try to recover it. But anyway, if you let it go, and again, there's a huge range of identity theft. But you can help yourself out a great deal, two-factor identification and keeping, large sums of money in accounts that can't be moved. I'm super paranoid about cryptocurrency. That's why I've got it in a vault. I mean, it's fairly neat in fact that no withdrawals. If I wanted to pull money out of there, I got to notify them 2 days in advance, and then I have to use a couple different emails, and then there's other factors of authentication. It's getting to be more and more like that. So these guys, the authors, are looking at the old school methods, and it's so far beyond that. Skimming tactic, pre-taxing. You can see too all the phishing attempts, where you get the emails through either UAA or Amazon saying, "Oh, you need to contact." If a credit card company calls you and says there's a problem with your card, just say, "Okay, great. Let me call you back." And look up their number and call them. If you didn't initiate the call, it's probably a scam. So do not, if the calls are incoming or you click on some link with some whatever, some virus or some different spoofing involved, it's just a bad thing. You need to be the one to initiate it. You can thank them for the heads up that they pointed out what's going on. But sometimes, most of the time, you can just tell it's completely not legit. But if you at all think it's legitimate, you know, initiate the call. Call the company directly from a number that you look up yourself and find out. And anyway, farming, crime rings. So, yeah, lots of money to be made. But these people's tactics, it's pointless putting them out here on a slide because they're changed very quickly. Yeah, I've had tons of stuff taken out of my mailbox, but not so much anymore. So documents and things like that. If you notice the documents now, generally don't have your whole account number on it. So things have really moved away from the paper theft. Secured sites, obviously. So the bank card statements, if you're waiting for the print statements, you're probably too late. You really need to look at these things online. Be careful. I mean, again, these guys they're insulting themselves. It's kind of a boomer thing. Personal checks. You probably don't even have personal checks. So computers from hackers. Again, most any reputable site now, they've come up with a variety of ways, whether it's, an authenticator or tied to a device or, but two-factor authentication. Now, to have that on a checking account, that would probably be quite cumbersome. So that's why don't keep, real money in there. If you see somebody with, over say $8,000 or $10,000 in their checking account, regardless of their wealth, that money's at risk. Don't do that. So personally identifiable information is much more of a thing now, and companies are taking more part to it. Identity theft. I'm not a huge believer in this stuff. I've had information on databases, and they'll say, because our database was violated, we'll sign you up for a free year of this identity theft. And again, there'll be some fraud on my card, something will happen, I'll notice it, and then a few days later, I'll get a note from these identity theft people. Well, it's a little late. So I've never been warned of identity theft in progress by these people. Again, they've always given me the free ones. I've never signed up for LifeLock or something like that. Maybe it'd be different. One thing too, if this gets back to credit cards in general, if you're going to be doing some traveling or something erratic or just unusual, you probably want to call a credit card company beforehand, and say, hey, I'm going to be going to Hawaii, or I'm going to be, doing this massive road trip or something. And they may, ask what locations you're going to be at, because If you don't, I've had this happen in Hawaii, and I've had it happen on a road trip where I was making good time, and they're like, this is inconceivable. This person's in Texas in the morning. It is in you know um, what do you call it, Montana that evening. Anyway, they're like, yeah, we'll suspend the credit card. And so if I would have called and said I'm going to be doing a lot of driving, they would have let it go. So anyway, take immediate action. Obviously, phone calls and correspondence. Phone calls. I mean, you definitely want to initiate it with a phone call, but you need a track record. So either email or a letter. Contact the police. They really probably don't care, but it will probably be part of the process later on. I've had that where they say, okay, you need to get a police report, and fair enough. You go down there. They don't care. You don't care. You pay them the $10, and they give you the form, and you mail it in. FTC. Yeah, credit reporting companies, creditors who may be impacted. So you're gonna be dealing with those credit report things. I used to have because I was going to Eastern Europe and Middle East all the time, and I would generally pull the contents of my wallet out and photocopy it and have it with me in a different location. And the thought was that maybe I'd be able to, even if my wallet was stolen or something, I might be able to at least have the card. But even more important than that, if the wallet was stolen, I at least know who to call. I used to carry perhaps too many credit cards. Now I just carry one or two. But anyway, you can only call the people if you know their phone number or have some way of contacting them, and then also know what was in your wallet when it was stolen. So anyway, Equifax, yeah, they, yeah. This is kind of after the fact. The damage is done, and you might want to alert them. And also, if you called them and you said, "Hey, my identity's been stolen," then anybody who does a credit check on you, it would show up as suspicious and maybe be shut down. So, it wouldn't hurt to call them. Experian, the other guys, and then TransUnion. Yep. So this is the video. Let's see if we can run it right here. Nope, I don't think it's going to show. It's kind of interesting. It's a credit card video that I'll have in the for comment, but it's from Europe, UK. All right. So those are kind of the basics of credit. Now we're going to get into more management of the credit. So we've talked about this before. A good, useful thing. These monthly statements, but also the annual statements. It makes things for me a lot easier with taxes. And also it's kind of a reverse budgeting type thing. And you want to be a convenience user. Pay it off and don't pay any interest. Now you can do all sorts of stupid things if you're not paying attention, but you're not going to let that happen. Yep. So compound interest, your friend or your foe. You apply for a new credit card. A lot of times all they want is your, annual income and your social, and they'll go from there. They're not really going to get down into your budget. Come on. You're screwing up. Sorry. Yep. So, yeah, sometimes there's a lot of credit card offers coming out. Other times there's not. So, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, these are not all the same. Yeah, because American Express generally requires full payment. So don't get wrapped up in some of these things. I had this really cool card. It was metal and it just, looked nice and everything else. But number one, I did it because I got 50,000 free miles, but the miles are not like dollars. There's not like a set unit. They were like whatever Canadian dollars or Zimbabwean dollars or something. It took 50,000 miles to get to Seattle, so that was kind of a joke. plus their interest rate was high. American Express, like I think I mentioned this before, where I have to carry it for one of the companies I work for, but it's like the lottery. You take it to a gas station or something, and you find out, oh yeah, we don't take that one. So it's just an extra thing in your wallet. I generally don't carry it. Plus, if you're late on your bills, they don't send a bill to you, not even a courtesy note. They send it straight to whoever they can within the company to try and get you in trouble. So, yeah, they definitely made an enemy with me. Proprietary cards, yep, could happen. I mean, there are certain stores where that's kind of their shtick. That's what they do. You can't buy anything there and get a reasonable price on it unless you're using their card to get their specials like Kohl's or something like that. But anyway, for me, it just kind of makes a fatter wallet, and I generally don't shop at those stores anyway. Credit limit, often adjustable. Call them up and say, hey, I've got to purchase this, and they'll generally do it over the phone. Overdraft protection. Now this gets back into a Visa or a MasterCard that's tied to your credit card. Very nice. Annual fee. Yeah, I do pay an annual fee on some of them, or one of them, the one I have, but it's necessary for the perks. So again, it's like looking at a bank. You have to evaluate and decide whether it's worth it or not. Unless there's a lot of perks involved, again, something like American Express, I don't need to, be paying a huge amount of money for a card. And then incentives. So a lot of us want miles or whatever. But the gold and platinum, if you're trying to impress people that are impressed by that, it's not a smart thing to do. Grace period, typically there's the same. You have till the end of the statement closing date, but you have to look at the fine print. The interest rate, again, you can sign up for different things, but if you're paying it off in full, you don't necessarily care what the interest rate is. And cash advances. If you do that, that is one of the times I did have somebody dive in my mailbox and they pulled out those little checks that sometimes will come with the credit card bills. I've switched to paperless billing, but anyway, they got one of those checks, and it's not really a check; it's just a cash advance. And so they took $300. They wrote this bogus check, and on my statement, I think it was 330, where 10% of it came right back to me as a fee, plus the money they took, plus they started charging interest on it right then. And that's all part of the credit card. There is no grace period on cash advances, so they're not like using an ATM. They will cost you money, and they will cost you a lot of money, and they'll cost you from day one. So, I don't know why you would take, well, there may be some circumstances, but anyway, try to avoid them. It's not a good thing. Finance charge. So, normally it's done on the average balance, could be the previous balance, whatever you signed up for. But this is the most common. But anyway, if the balance is zero at the end of the pay period, regardless of the method, you're not paying interest. So pay it off each time. APR is what we talk about. So we talked about simple interest, but APR, they want to compound it, right? Simple interest rate includes any fees charged by the creditor, and anyway, it's typically going to be compounded month after month. Go figure. Yep. So they're just calculating simple interest, but it's typically going to compound on you. We've all seen a credit card bill. Finance charges, just look at that, make sure it's zeros. If not, figure out what you did wrong and make it zeros next time. But again, disputing the heirs, these people's attitude definitely changes, within a couple of days. For example, my daughter, she was going to school in Alabama at Auburn. She left her keys up here in Alaska. And so she gets down there, she's in Atlanta, can't even get to the parking lot. Actually, but she could get to one of the hotels, nearby. So anyway, she had a credit card, so just take a taxi and go to the hotel, and I'll, send you the keys by air freight, the Blue Streak on Alaska Airlines. And the taxi driver, it was like a 2 mile ride, and he charged her $100 and something. And she's literally in tears. She calls me, and so I called the credit card company, and boom, it was done. They that's obviously a scam, and they were completely friendly, completely happy, because the person who did that, if you take a credit card, as a vendor, as a merchant, you don't get your money for 2 to 3 days. So it's dead easy for the credit card company just to go, oh, this is fraudulent, and they just cancel that charge, and they don't have to do any collection or anything. So that's what they're act like they're being very, very magnanimous, and giving you great service, but they're also saving themselves tremendous headache, by canceling it right then. Now, if you would have let that go a couple 3 days, now they're trying to recover it. In this case, I don't think they would have been able to. I reported the taxi guy as well, and turns out that, I don't know whether the guy was murdered or what, but the guy driving the taxi, the taxi medallion belonged to a guy who had been murdered like 3 years previously. So the whole thing was flaky, and she's lucky she got to a hotel regardless of the price. But anyway, dealing with credit card companies can be very, very easy if it's done early on. But you let it go, and you get a bad attitude. Credit Card Act. So again, 2009, things have changed a little bit, but again, just refinements. But the scams change as well. So. Some of the things that have changed too, there used to be much better provisions for credit cards than there were for debit cards, and some of the new legislation has expanded some of the fraud protection to debit cards as well. So if you're using a credit card as opposed to using cash, good luck. If my daughter, for example, would have paid cash to that credit card or to that cabbie, that would have been over. But the fact that there was a credit card, gave her some recourse. Okay. Yep. If you think you're going to, pay 10% of your credit card bill or a certain percentage, and invest some other money, that's not logical. Your investments aren't going to keep up with that interest rate that's being paid on the credit card bills. So you need to pay off the credit card bills. You could also use debit cards if you can keep track of it. It comes directly from your checking account, and maybe less of a problem with you overspending. Credit repair services. So these are the commercial ones, the .com kind of people. But if you call, Visa, MasterCard, whoever, and say, look, I got some issues with a credit card, and they may refer you to one of their people who they actually work with or pay for or whatever, and that might have a good outcome. But if you use some .com thing who thinks that you're going to you're going to pay them $50 and they're going to make it to where you can skate on that bill, that's probably not happening. Yep. So again, credit cards can be huge. They can make your life so much easier. And if you don't have a credit card, good luck getting a hotel. Good luck, getting a rental car. I mean, I see people all the time, when I'm traveling, and they'll try to use cash for a rental car, and I'm paying $10 a day or $15 a day. They come in there off the street because obviously they don't have a credit card, so they couldn't have made a reservation, and they just whatever, 5, 10 times the amount I'm paying. Plus, they make them put down a cash deposit. Plus, it's just all these. It'd just be aggravating. So now you've gotten yourself in a little bit of trouble. This debt consolidation loan, obviously, talk to the credit card company. They may be able to help you with that because it'll perhaps get you out from under that higher interest credit card bill. Now you're going to the pawn shop, you're eating ramen. Anyway, things didn't go well. Personal bankruptcy. So you got Chapter 7, Chapter 13. This is not like the easy out. In fact, they change things all the time to make this a less attractive choice. So it's not a fresh start. It's going to stick with you and it's going to be reflected in that credit report. There may be no information in your credit report after the bankruptcy, which sends a message to all of the people that, oh, this guy was bankrupt. Anyway, two different ways of doing it. Chapter 7, Chapter 13. But what happens is you go to the court and you say, yeah, I'm not good with money. Is essentially what you're saying. You're saying I need you to get involved in my life and take care of my bills. And so, you put all your assets, everything you have of value, and now, in exchange, the court will tell you, well, we don't think you need that, and you can get by without that, and sell this car, sell that, and you give away a great deal of your freedom. That's in Chapter 7. Chapter 13, this is like a wage earner plan where they're saying, yeah, you could probably pay these people off. It may take you a while, but we're going to, um, make sure that you keep working and you pay these people. So anyway, in either case, you're giving the court control over your finances, and you don't get a whole lot of say once you've declared bankruptcy. It's better than debtor's prison, but anyway. Yep. So, does you have a credit card is a large component of your emergency plan is not a bad thing to do, especially if you've got investments. So rather than keeping, 15 grand in your credit checking account, keep it in some other account and use your credit card and um, if that emergency happens, pay it off, pay the credit card, and then pay the emergency with the credit card, and then use what's in your investments to pay off that credit card, and do so within the month, and you're good. But in order to have that credit card be part of that plan, it needs to not have a huge balance on it. So retrieve your credit report. Do not turn it in, just for your personal use. And then a second problem. So let me go back and see something real quick. I was going to show you part of that credit fraud. I want to make sure the clip is still working. Yeah, so this is pretty interesting stuff. What it is these guys. As I'm not going to, whirl through the whole video with you, but there's an ATM, a Gildamat, a cash point, whatever you want to call them, and they've got a little pinhole camera that they install up here. They just kind of paste it on there, makes it look, normal. They do a pretty good job. And then on where you slide in the card, they'll affix a secondary card reader, and it's slick. And further here in the video, there's some really annoying music. But these guys are selling the stuff. This isn't a current ad. these guys kind of come and go, but they um, show where they're selling these. And they make these custom molds for all the different ATMs, and you'll see them at one point, and so those things will just kind of glue them onto the front. You won't even know, and you'll see the guy here in a second. He'll wipe a card through there, and in fact, they even light up with LEDs and stuff as if they've worked, and and you'll see it transfer. See, that's the card number. Anyway, that audio's got to be annoying. Anyway, what it does is it gives them the card number. They've got the pinhole camera. They've got your pin. They got everything they need, and they drain your bank account. And pretty difficult to work around, especially since they've taken that money in cash. Makes it much more difficult. So good luck with that. Any other questions, let me know.